See where I put things I create at. Not for the Weaker Sex by David J. Rowbottom. Volume 2, How to Grow Up, Key. The Pubic Inconvenience. And there it is. My first pubic hair. I didn't see that coming, I muttered to myself as, for the first time since my consciousness came online, I stared long and hard at the curly, wiry hair sprouting from just above my short and soft object. This, I thought, requires further investigation. I strained to see around some pretty awkward corners, but soon realized that I'd have to be a little more imaginative. I considered getting the mirror from the bathroom wall, but it was both rather large and also likely to be missed. The last thing I wanted at a time like this is for my mother to enter my room to innocently ask the whereabouts of the family mirror, only to find me, legs akimbo, and dangling my almost manhood over the reflective surface she uses to put on her face. After some thought, I settled for the mirror Dad uses to shave. You know the sort I mean, on its own stand and two-sided. I used the side that magnifies, obviously, and commenced to terrify myself as I inspected some unusually ugly areas of my body. Never in the deepest and darkest recesses of my mind would I have imagined such sights were languishing in the unseeable regions Mother Nature had deemed too nasty to put openly on view. Writer's note: humans have been fine for approximately 182,000 years, until some bright Anatolian spark made a rudimentary mirror from obsidian, volcanic glass. The Egyptians then popped up with polished copper somewhere between 4,300 BCE. But it wasn't until 1835 that a German guy named Justus von Liebig created the modern mirror. After squinting for some time, I decided that the reason this department of my body looked like the leftovers on the chopping board of a butcher's shop was because everything was backwards in the mirror, and I put it to the back of my mind. Hopefully, forever. I'm sure most people have similar stories. At least I hope they do. I can't be the only person in the world to have self-inspectorized. Over the next couple of months, new hair sprung from previously bald skin until the whole of my pubis was a bushy delight. Different people will no doubt have different thoughts at a time like this. Why, for example, am I suddenly growing hair from the base of the thing I wee out of? How long will it grow, and will I have to go to the barber's to get it cut? Why has my music teacher, Miss Blythe, suddenly just popped into my head? Even, and this is only for future teachers of the English language, what is the collective noun for pubic hair? Writer's note: it's a pandemonium. So now I have a pandemonium of hair growing in my pubic zone. It's odd. It's a little scary. It's intriguing. Each day more appear, and before you know it, there's a congregation down there. Writer's note: it's now a congregation. I'm making all of this up. The congregation becomes a flourish as unattractive wiry hair springs out of my body from areas that had until now never warranted attention for more than a perfunctory glance. And out of the middle of this strange hairy coiffure it rises, the attractive human locator. And there it is, my first erection. I vaguely remember tugging at something for a clumsy moment only to be greeted with a bit of a discharge. Or I may have been lying on my stomach, dry humping my mattress. Who can remember? Was there a mess? Yes. Was it a little bit of a surprise? Of course. Did I have a feeling of confusion? Definitely. Was I painfully ashamed afterwards? Yes. Was there a single solitary moment when I thought I'd never do it again? Absolutely not. Images for masturbatory use. Now, no man, no matter what he says, can actually remember the full details of his first orgasmic expulsion. He will, however, remember his own version of Miss Blythe, writer's note, our innocent music teacher from earlier. The first imaginary images to dart into his mind, sometimes at highly inappropriate times, and cause enough blood to race to his newly discovered tool of joy, so as to render the heart discombobulated at the lack of vital fluid remaining for it to pump around the body. He will also be able to remember the first actual images that, when gazed upon, caused a rush of blood to his second head, so to speak. For me, it was the ladies in Mum's Marshall Ward catalogue. I have vague recollections of pretty models in fleecy pyjamas and young women looking strangely sexy in what were, quite evidently, old people's clothes. Fig A. Predominantly, though, it was the ladies who modelled the slightly see-through bras who stuck with me through the lean years. Fig B. They were my first fantasies. They were my first girlfriends. They were the first fleeting peek at a female nipple that I had ever seen. And it was fantastic. Admittedly, there were sexier garments on offer. Fig C. There were flimsier garments too, but these things, these see-through babies, were a window into the unknown. They were not covering the thing that I innocently believed they were designed to cover. In those days, I, rather naively, knew nothing of the struggle a woman has to find a bra that even comes close to fitting better than a couple of bin bags and some roof rack ties. I assumed they had to be covered when, in truth, they needed to be supported. Sorry, girls, but no one tells us these things. No one sits us down and explains the complexities of the opposite sex's form. We are left to discover all the information we can from any source available to us. Pages 67, 69, and 88. 91 of James Herbert's. The rats was a particular source of mine. It's a bit like that little flap of skin just underneath our scrotum that the opposite sex has no idea how to use. Writer's note. There is no flap of skin just underneath our scrotum, but I had you girls and possibly some of the boys thinking for a moment, eh? That first masturbatory moment, using an image as the spur and the many, 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 many moments to follow, marked the beginning of the greatest paradox the male of the species will ever experience. Some of the best moments of your life can be traced back to the decision-making efforts of the penis, but, and this is inevitable, it will also get you into a lot of bother and not care one jot. Allowing a conical mass of erectile tissue to have any say whatsoever in your financial and emotional future is simply ludicrous. It shouldn't even have a seat at the table. It should be sent out for a left-handed screwdriver, some checkered paint, and 6 feet of fallopian tubing. But no, man listens to it like it is the oracle of all knowledge, like it has all the answers to life's questions. It is impossible, until the onset of old age, to out-argue the old chap in most situations involving the object of your sexual desires. So we strike a balance. Our brain works tirelessly, desperate to establish the skills, learning, and intellectual wherewithal to provide us with a good job where we earn far more than we need, while our dangly doofer chooses the women who remove our surplus earnings, plus a little extra for luck. Writer's note. This is probably the first really offensive thing you've come across, so if you're still here attempting to break down your echo chamber, then beware. It's going to get worse. Perhaps you should just go. This brings to an end the wonderful era of pre-female man. Never again will you be able to worry about such innocent things as football, toy guns, cars, and sweets without being made to feel like a child by a woman who will, for the rest of her life, dream of fairy tale weddings and princes. Seem unfair? Get used to it. The first sightings. I genuinely cannot remember ever considering the intellectual, religious, artistic, or political common ground between myself and my first encounters with the opposite sex. All I knew was that when I looked at them, I really fancied them. My requirements were simple. Like me, let me touch you in an inappropriate manner. Let me keep touching you in an inappropriate manner. Be good-looking enough for me to proudly display to my friends. Be presentable enough for me to introduce to my family. That's it. That's all I needed. Opinions on all manner of subjects were positively avoided, as they would have led to immediate breakup. All I craved was a Marshall Ward model whose outer human shell served as host to a silent woman. What I got was something capable of threading together limitless numbers of words into sentences I could neither decipher nor understand, wrapped up in the body of an average female human. There was, as I have since discovered, a quiescent importance in learning to listen to incredibly dull stories about any and all of the following: a friend, an enemy, a colleague, a family member, a complete stranger, an animal, an occasion or event, a non-occasion or event, a shopping journey, a night out, a night in a body part, someone else's body part, a soap opera. Any other TV show goes soap without wanting to eat your own head from the inside out. It proves to be a skill that becomes of incredible value later in life and, if learned early, can save man from untold hours of inane chatter by woman. Correction. It will not save you from untold hours of inane chatter at all. It will, however, save you from having to listen to it attentively. A true expert can even consider the merits of the Duckworth-Lewis-Stern method. Writer's note: a mathematical formula used to calculate the target score for the team batting second in a limited overs cricket match that is so mind-numbingly complex that I have never met anyone who truly understands it, or sing the complete lyrics to Wonderwall in their head, while all the time convincing the chattering woman that he is eagerly gobbling up each morsel of information as if there were a test coming at the end of the week. There never is. Occasionally, however, a thread from the droning will re-enter mainstream conversation sometime later and catch man out. A look of confusion from you will rarely receive more than a simple tut, accompanied by a knowing look indicating that she understands that the passing of time, rather than insensitivity, has probably contributed to your lack of cognitive memory. The truth being, of course, that you simply hadn't bothered to process the information at point of delivery. The number of hours it is possible to save over a lifetime of female witterings will far outweigh any hurt feelings that your lack of attentiveness may cause. Writer's note: let us calculate based on an average male lifespan of 80 years, and let us assume that the male is in a relationship of one form or another with a female for 50 of those years. That's 18,250 days. Now let us work on the idea that you have had to listen to inane female chatterboxery for half of these days, 9,125, and that each session has taken approximately 1 hour. If man can learn early enough to hear and understand only the most important points, while nodding, shaking, laughing, grimacing, faking shock and surprise at the correct times, he can easily save himself, and this is a huge overestimate, about 1/4 of the time he would spend if he simply went blindly into each. Guess what happened at work today? Or you will not believe what Cheryl did last night, without the essential skill of partial listening. So, in conclusion, if man listened attentively to only 1/4 of the 9,125 hours of lifetime gossiping, he could save himself 2,281.25 hours. This equates to approximately 95 days. The sad part is that you still have to be physically present during it, so, unless your brain can work imaginary wonders, this entire writer's note is pointless, and the only reason I haven't deleted it is because it took so long to write. Sorry. The first fumblings. The first relationship is a tricky little bugger to pull off, although I didn't know it while I was living through it. At the time, I just thought, thank the Lord that some daughter of a disappointed parent has found me unobjectionable enough to allow me to rub things against them in a pathetic way. There are a lot of games involved. Furtive looks across the classroom/office/canteen. A smile here. A witticism there. A moment of genuine embarrassment. For example, a piece of snot hanging from a nostril during a prolonged conversation that I only noticed later when I found a mirror in an attempt to discover why she was so enamored with the center of my face. I'd hoped it was because I have a cute nose. It subsequently became clear that it was because I'd had a nasal dig earlier and hadn't quite fully removed a flapper. I eventually plucked up the courage to ask her out. Apparently, at least for my generation, this is still man's work. However, to be fair, the woman does make it blindingly obvious if she's interested. I'm sorry, that is misleading. The truth is that she makes it blindingly obvious if she is not interested. If your approach is not greeted with derision, a look of terror, her immediate departure, or vomit, then you can pretty much assume that she likes you being near her. Add to this the clear signs that even the most unskilled male observer could read a giggle at a bad joke, the hair twirl, the hair flick, the inadvertent brush of a hand or arm, and you can pretty much guess that she won't laugh uncontrollably in your face if you shyly suggested the idea of perhaps contemplating the chance that you could maybe, possibly kinda, go out for, I don't know, a thingy. I didn't mean thingy, of course. I meant a cake, a piece of cake, or a cup of beer, or maybe a drink. Not that a cup of beer isn't a drink. It is, isn't it? That was rhetorical. Help me. Whatever you'd like to do, your call, baby. Did I just call you baby? I didn't mean to call you baby. Sorry. Stupid, stupid, stupid. No, not you. Sorry. Please say yes. We can sort out the details later. What do you think? She said yes. I asked up the whole thing, and still she said yes. This, if given due thought and consideration, should have made everything else go much easier. Knowing that she likes you, however, makes nothing easier. I very quickly forgot the fact that she said yes, in spite of your pathetically inadequate approach, preferring instead to believe that our relationship was perpetually on the edge of collapse. I assumed that any erroneous act on my part would completely destroy the delicate balance of our partnership, and therefore, paradoxically, would compel me to become a different person to the one she fell for in the first place. If man were to learn, early in life, how difficult the whole process of asking a woman on a date was, then I'm convinced that there would be a swift and dramatic swell in the number of young gentlemen seeking clerical celibacy, followed by the complete eradication of the species. The first date. The first date with a new girl, no matter how dreadful it is in actual terms, always goes well, nostalgically. The reason? You fancy the pants off each other. A night at a working men's club, watching a man with a ferret down his trousers, would simply turn into a cute adventure, given the passage of time. All of the rubbish dates below become adorable anecdotes if all you actually do throughout the whole tedious date process is stare at the other person and wonder what they look like naked. He took me fishing at the local reservoir on a Sunday morning. He took me to his local dealer to score some weed. He took me to Sports Direct because he needed new trainers. He took me through the local car wash. He took me to the local B&Q because he likes the coffee at the cafe there. The second first date. Date 2 is perhaps not as much fun retrospectively, but at the time it is more relaxed and therefore it appears superior. It's a little bit like trying to explain your favourite football match. Is it the one where your team scored 4 goals in the first half, effectively killing off any challenge from the opposition, and then displayed excellent skills in the second half and popped in 2 extra goals? Or is it the 4-3 thriller which ebbed and flowed from team to team and was only decided in your team's favour in the dying seconds of time added on? At the time of watching it is probably the first, but on reflection it is the second, because you now know the outcome, and all the fear and nerves you experienced at the time have vanished. So what to do on that tricky second date? Perhaps a jaunt to the nearest Wickes would be fun. They don't have a cafe, but they do an excellent line in 2x4, and who can resist the smooth feel of a nice bit of plain timber? Or the pictures. After all, you probably used up most of your best conversation at the B&Q cafe, so going somewhere where talking is frowned upon could be a good idea. Writer's note. I would just like to say that most of the people I know laugh when I call it the pictures. It is and will always be going to the pictures. So there. The movie date was a dangerous option back in the days when you had to check the local paper to see what the dark one-screen Odeon was showing, but in this modern era of the multi-screen mega Uberplex, it's a much safer bet. It is, however, quite a painful moment when you discover just how different your tastes in movies are, whilst you stand in the full glare of underpaid teenage boys and girls in yellow polo shirts. The only thing that I can absolutely guarantee is that you will end the evening discussing the almost but not quite funny moments of an unimaginatively scripted rom-com, and not the poor aim of adversaries firing a gun in the direction of Arnold Schwarzenegger. This is because you will not choose the movie. Our cunning-a-lady friends will be very clever and make you feel like you have chosen the movie, when you haven't. Even the most naive dating rookie will eventually realize this when, after 10 minutes of the film, the Uzi 9mm count is nil, but the holding hands and looking lovingly into each other's eyes count is climbing exponentially. It's not until you are on the way home that this apparently easy second date begins to niggle you a little. You can't quite work it out why, but something is creeping up on you. A feeling. A sense of dread. Too many minstrels, perhaps? No, you can't have too many minstrels at the pictures. It's definitely dread. And then it hits you. Something reaches up inside you, grabs your guts, and attempts to drag them out through your bottom. Oh shit. You realize that very soon you will have to instigate. The first kiss. I remember the journey back from the movies. I went quiet, desperately trying to plan a strategy. She must want me to kiss her, I thought to myself, because, well, she's here with me. I walked her to her front door and grabbed her, probably a little too hard, but with the passage of time, I'd like to call it passionately. I pulled her close and kissed her. On the lips. Bullseye. And you know what? It went okay. Fine, in fact. A bit clumsy, but neither of us vomited or began to sob, so it can't have been that bad. I tried to make it as Hollywood as possible, and if truth be known, this probably helped. Copying Gere Roberts or Ryan Hanks is not a bad idea. Many years later, I realized that the kiss is a good barometer for the success or failure of a relationship. But just not prodding her with my stiffening penis was all I wished for at that moment. The third first date. Date 3 proved to be the really hard one. It was now obvious that we liked each other. She could manage my bad dress sense, and I had figured out how to smile when she smiled and look sad or concerned when she did, while she recounted mind-numbing stories about her day. Writer's note: the first steps on an important journey. As with most women, mine took full control of date 3 and managed to manufacture an evening alone babysitting. This is a classic, but others are available. Her mum and dad might conveniently go out for the night, or her flatmate might have a crisis requiring her to go away. Even I, with my complete lack of understanding as to the nuances of courtship, understood the magnitude of us being alone all evening. Excitement was followed very quickly by apprehension, and then complete fear. More modern generations no doubt suffer the same anxieties, but they have a search engine to help them. I was going to need more than a Marshall Ward catalogue for this. Fortunately, I had a friend who had found his dad's pawn briefcase under the wardrobe, and he invited me to come and peruse the contents with him. Once in the briefcase, the code being a ball-busting 000, we found a Hustler, a Playboy, a Fiesta, and oddly, a Look-In. These wonderful magazines, filled with pointless articles, gave me a good idea of what things should look like and where I would find them. Writer's note: to be fair, the Look-In had a very informative article about Lindsay Wagner, a.k.a. the Bionic Woman, a personal favorite of mine and possibly where my ear fetish began. Marvelous. Simply wonderful. I would have to hope that nature and instinct would pull me through the actual mechanics unless, of course, there was actually going to be a Harley-Davidson in the front room over which she would drape herself. Once we'd looked through the magazines and made a very awkward eye contact, the likes of which I've never experienced before or since, my friend broke the moment with a typical laddish statement. You going to take some Johnnies with you then? A chemist shop, a young boy, and an amount of cash I can't quite remember. Many pages of comedy prose and many hours of stand-up hilarity have been forced upon us on this subject. I will not attempt comedy mainstays such as the mumbled request at the pharmacy counter, followed by the noisy repeat for all to hear, by the girl assistant. Or the shopping list of pharmacological requirements with the big black knobbler hidden halfway down the inventory. I'm just going to tell you what happened the first time I went into a chemist to buy a pack of condoms. I walked confidently into the shop, browsed the selection on offer for about a minute, lifted the box of choice from the shelf, and carried it to the counter, where the nice lady removed the security tag, took my money and popped the box of 3 condoms into a little white bag. I remember she gave a gentle smile as I took the bag from her. I like to think it was a knowing smile, registering her admiration for a task well executed, along with her recognition of a coming deed. In truth, it was more likely that it was a grin of sympathy at a young man who was likely to indulge himself, masturbatorily speaking, to 3 posh wanks. Once home, I sat with the family for a reasonable length of time, and then suddenly, and without explanation, yawned and excused myself. Rehearsing with Johnny. Now, maintaining an erection while reading a rather small print leaflet folded like a road map and containing confusingly abstract pictures is a delicate balance. Doing it while holding a Tandy workshop torch is fraught with potential limpness and makes putting a condom onto your dwindling penis a little like trying to put a balaclava on a blancmange. Writer's note, the Tandy work torch. Not, I repeat, not a stealth item. Writer's note, the Tandy work torch. Actual size. I eventually managed, but I can tell you by the time it was on, writer's note, the condom, not the torch, I was in no mood to tug anything other than my bedsheets up tight and go to sleep. Condoms, however, can take up a substantial chunk of weekly funds, so I soldiered on. I concluded and removed with some peripheral spillage, but was quite happy overall. I decided, in the name of prudence and the fact that I'd become quite sleepy, that a second session was not required. I felt confident that, should the situation arise, I would be able to squeeze the plasticine into the food bag, so to speak. Twice even, as, due to my ability to learn quickly, I had 2 left. A tin of condoms from the 1950s. It says they are tested on new modern equipment for my protection. If I'm not mistaken, the Fender Stratocaster was new, modern equipment in the 50s. Makes you think, eh? You can only begin to imagine the 2 demographics of people who bought these bad boys. Genuine, and probably quite embarrassed, are men who were endowed with long and uncomfortable penises that made lovemaking a painful and dangerous pastime. Complete gits who thought they were impressing the sales assistant. The arrival. So I arrived at the 3rd date wearing my best shirt, my tightest, and painfully uncomfortable jeans with 2 condoms in the back pocket, and my groin suitably washed and tidied. As the night drew on, it became blindingly obvious that, unless one of us initiated this thing, nothing would happen. I steeled myself for the onslaught and dove in. She lay there and politely allowed me to rub, dribble, lick, kiss, fondle, struggle and grope my way to what can only be described as a magnificent and very unsexy failure. I tried. I really tried. I stroked her hair. I kissed her lips gently. I touched outer clothing somewhere in the region of where the Marshall Ward catalogue seemed to suggest that ladies' coverable bits were located. But it was clear that this was neither the time nor place for us. She whispered softly into my ear, "I don't think I'm ready." And I stopped doing whatever it was I was doing immediately. "You're not too disappointed, are you?" she said sweetly, and I replied with the most honest thing I had ever said in my life up to that point. "I'm so glad you said that," I said, "because I'm not ready either." With the spectre of intercourse removed, we spent the rest of the night cuddling and necking on the sofa. It was a wonderful night. When I got home from this beautiful night of passion and romance, I abused myself so hard and for so long that I made myself sore. But it was nice while it lasted. Female bits. You see, there is no handbook for this stuff. Well, that's not entirely true. My parents got a book from the library. and left it placed delicately enough in view to make it obvious that it was probably for me to peruse. Well, that was the impression I got, and given the fact that my mum and dad spawned 2 children, I'd have to guess that they were already well on their way to understanding the necessities and complications of human reproduction. They also never commented on the fact that the aforementioned library book had been taken from its original place on the table. After a confusing week of cartoon-based self-abuse, I placed it back on the table and then it was gone forever. We never spoke of it. The book was full of badly drawn images. There were cartoon sperms with faces, oddly proportioned human shapes, terrifying images of things that looked like alien life forms. The thing to which I refer had a mouth, nose, eyes, and, in short, scared the shit out of me. Finding out what it was, what it did, and where it was located in the female body took away none of the fear I associated with the drawing. In fact, an extraterrestrial life form would have been considerably easier to believe. Writer's note. A rather more accurate graphic than was in the book my parents so delicately left for me to find. I searched the internet, using as many phrases as I could think of in an effort to find the actual book, but it seems to have been stricken from the records. Now, I'm not a supporter in any way of the Nazi practice of book burning, but in this particular case, I would have been right at the front of the queue in my lederhosen, with Wagner blaring out of my state-sponsored C-car pod. Writer's note. Other things which cause me distress. Add to that the fact that all the images appeared to have been drawn by the same hand that had given us the rhubarb custard cartoon, and you can understand why I didn't sleep very well that year, or for that matter, much since. If it was the intention of my parents to scare me so much that I would never attempt any kind of mission south of the Lady Naval, then they very nearly succeeded. Only the fact that I was a horny little bugger saved me from a life of chastity. Years later, upon contemplation, I realized that the book was as much use to me in the ways of love and procreation as would have been the Haynes manual for a 1977 Ford Granada. Writer's note. A mighty and wonderfully informative read about a truly magnificent car, but not much use when it comes to getting human beings to bonk the living daylights out of each other. The advice. When your friends get wind of the fact that your relationship is entering the he's about to get some stage, it's amazing how many of them suddenly become experts in the ways of love. Even though you've known them for years and know their sexual history as well as they do, they still offer up advice they believe to be sound. Show her you're a man, mate. Stick your tongue in her mouth as soon as you get a chance. She'll love it. Use a condom. You don't want to get her up the tub. Don't use a condom. It doesn't feel as good. Anyway, it's her responsibility. Tickle her. Be gentle. Be rough. Go slow. Go fast. You get the picture? Walk up to her, get out your penis, tickle her, fondle her, stick your tongue somewhere, speed up, slow down, cuddle her, grab her hard, grab her soft. So, it was over to the pages of Cosmopolitan I went and boy, were those problem pages good. Like a window into woman's mind. It's where I learned the most valuable lesson of all. Girls like sex too. The first time. First times are scary, but I suspect that if you follow convention and date someone the same general age as you, you're going to learn at the same speed and become proficient enough to probably get someone pregnant eventually. Remember all the experiences through rose-tinted spectacles and hence not have a nervous breakdown each time you glimpse a nipple. Just enjoy all the jiggling for jiggling's sake. I was very lucky because my first sexual encounter with someone was unknown to the other person. Now, I don't mean anything seedy or illegal happened. I just mean that it was a lovely moment that I suspect the girl in question knew nothing about, as I concealed my knee-trembling squeal quite well. Nicola, if you're reading this, you may tell a different story. I shall attempt to impart the same story from the 2 different perspectives. My version. I'd been hanging out near the local corner convenience store with the same crew of teenagers for some time. Nicola was part of the gang, and she was lovely. She had a collection of physical attributes that I found very appealing. As you probably will find with most normal people, the sum of the parts was more attractive than the parts. Freckles, noses, eyes, chins, cheeks, ears, and necks that would, on their own, appear to be contrary to the media's aversion of perfection, can take on a whole new beauty if clumped together in the right combination for you. The you at the end of the previous sentence is the most important part, as it has to be, and can only be, your combination. It's a bit like a horny version of Mr. Potato Head. I shall, for the purposes of clarity, explain with a couple of examples. Put together, if you will, the eyes of Meg Ryan, the nose of Audrey Hepburn, the lips of Britt Ekland, the neck of Sandra Bullock, and the cheeks of Jennifer Aniston, and you could very easily find yourself with an image of a swamp monster. Alternatively, mix together Hilda Ogden's eyes, Dame Edna Everidge's nose, and Lily Savage's lips, and you could find yourself with the image of the woman of your dreams. Or not, but you get the idea. Anyway, Nicola was my Ogden/Everidge/Savage combo. In short, I really fancied her. A lot. Every time our gang got together, I'd glance at her, hoping beyond hope that she wouldn't see me looking. Why I didn't want to be caught is another of the many denied any interest whatsoever when asked, and acted aloof and indifferent any time she gave me a smile. What a dick! Writer's note. I'm not telling you who all of these parts belong to, but they are what the media would tell you is perfection. But then, one night, when the combination of cheap cider and the cold night air was affecting her senses in just the right quantities, she grabbed me and kissed me. We stopped, looked at each other, leant against a wall and tried to eat each other's lips as if our very existence depended on it. And guess what? I kinda knew what to do. It wasn't good. It probably wasn't right, but I seemed to instinctively kiss and grab and fondle the right bits, and she seemed to like it. She kept making little groaning noises, unbearably sexy little groaning noises. I felt an enlargement which I hadn't had in a standing position before. She moaned a little more. I listened carefully and noticed that I too was moaning, deep, manly moans, as though I'd just gained my snogging wings. I felt like a man. My enlargement twitched slightly in my 1980s stretch denim jeans, and she moved closer and ground herself into me. She moaned again. I moaned, a little higher in pitch this time, but still acceptable as a man noise. She gently flicked her tongue past mine. What was her tongue doing in my mouth? This was new. Nothing of another person's body had ever been inside mine. I felt a twitch, then 3 more. Then many more, followed by a high-pitched squeal which I attributed to a loose fan belt on the red Ford Fiesta that had just passed by. Writer's note. A classic little hatchback, renowned for having a fan belt which, when loose, sounded like a young boy coming in his stretch jeans. And then my interest in having her tongue in my mouth and her spit on my lips dwindled. It didn't seem to have the same allure as earlier. I mean, I did the decent thing and kept kissing her until she seemed satisfied. Her satisfaction appeared to come when she asked me if I had any ciggies. I did have ciggies. We had a cigarette. Nicola's version. He was the least idiotic member of a bunch of idiots. Probably because he never spoke to me. I kissed him, and he came in his jeans just as a red car drove by. He had cigarettes. I got a cigarette. The first proper relationship. Sorry, Nicola. The first long-term relationship requires more than a randomly generated selection of Mr. Potato Head features that tick some unknown and poorly understood collection of boxes. She needs to be fanciable and your intellectual equal, but not much else. What you don't want under any circumstance is for your girlfriend to appear more intelligent than you. Writer's note. Note to girls. It's okay to be cleverer than your boyfriend. In fact, studies suggest that you have no choice. Just don't let him know it. This is torturous for man and can only lead, once realized, to the immediate ceasing of the partnership. To ensure this doesn't happen, it is essential some kind of test be taken. I would suggest the Wechsler Adult Intelligence Scale, but this, rather like its explanation below, is rather long and drawn out, which makes it tricky to slip into general conversation. Writer's note. WAIS was designed to test the intelligence of adults. It is a revision of the Wechsler-Bellevue test first released in 1939. By 1955, David Wechsler had gone solo, so to speak, and released his own test. The fourth edition of the test was released in 2008, and that is where we are up to. I don't know how much the 1955 test differs from the 2008 version. Perhaps there are fewer questions about Dennis Compton and the newly produced Fish Finger, and more about the internet and Boris Johnson. With that in mind, I have produced my own test. It is short, can be completed very quickly, and is scientifically proven to give the definitive answer as to whether your chosen woman has more book smarts than you. Writer's note. The science bit is in no way true. It will prove if your new girlfriend is, as my mum would say, a smart bum. The smart bum quiz, Q1. What is the river running through Chester, England called? B, C, D, E, Q2. What is the name of the mathematical constant that is the base of the natural logarithm? B, C, D, E, Q3. Red, black, yellow and white are all types of what? B, C, D, Q4. What flying insect is known for its role in pollination and its production of honey? B, C, D, Q, 5. If you do well in this test, you will become an of Green Gables, Tita, Delusion, X, results. Her score is much higher than yours. She will regularly put you down with scathing comments. Unfortunately, they will be intelligent, well-constructed, and probably correct. Get rid of her. Her score is much lower than yours. You should probably have sex with her one more time and then dump her. Her score is in the same ballpark as yours. You've got yourself a keeper. The meeting. So, I went to a party. It was on a Wednesday night. I know. Who goes to a party on a Wednesday night? It turns out I only needed one person to go. Me and the boys entered, all smug, as though the host owed us a favor for turning up. It turns out I owed him a favor. We walked first into the kitchen to stash our beer in the washing machine for later and steal someone else's for now. The kitchen was very well attended for a Wednesday. We sashayed into the adjoining dining area to see what the female count was and were pleasantly surprised to see that there was an equal number. Writer's note. We've all been to the party where it's all men apart from a couple of girls who are either loving it or desperately working their way to the front door and freedom. The boy done good for a Wednesday. The dining room was open plan and led to the living room from where I heard the following sentence. Hey, Jane, look, it's that guy from work. I turned and saw a vision of beauty. Her smile lit up the room and she was heading straight for me. I had seen her before, but only as I passed by to go to the staff canteen. I had always noticed her and yet always played it cool, like a dumbass. Her face, the way she moved towards me, her everything was too much to take. I couldn't work it out. She couldn't mean me. I assumed she would walk past me to another person, but she stopped in front of me and punched my arm. Why do you never say hi to me at work? From that moment on, there were only two people at the party, socializing as a couple. Our first two dates were perfect, and I still, to this day, do not know how I managed it. The third date was satisfactory, and by satisfactory, I don't mean it was fine, or adequate, or acceptable. I mean we were both very satisfied. Eventually, though, like all things, a routine set in. I introduced her to my drinking buddies and occasionally went round to her mum and dad's house. The first of these two activities seemed to be a strange attempt to have a new person in my life who I wanted to hold close in both a cuddly and horny way, but who also slotted seamlessly into life with the people I really didn't want to be cuddly and or horny with. Now here I have to admit to having a little sympathy for woman. What happened to your life? We thrust our new squeeze into a world of dipsomania where she is forced to become a proximity friend with many other girlfriends who similarly do not want to be in this pub watching their boyfriends play pool and get drunk. This will, unbeknownst to you at the time, cause all manner of pain and discomfort at a later date, when you inevitably split up, and friends have to be argued over and divided up into many awkward and odd combinations. The second of the two activities is no less bizarre. You now spend your remaining evenings eating food off a tray in front of the telly in the presence of her mum and dad. It's usually some kind of fish finger with oven chips and white bread combo. Once the beige, but no less delicious for it, food is hoovered up, you make your excuses and go to her room to listen to some music. Writer's note. Translated, this means, as a thank you for the delicious food you have just... Writer's note. Listening to Monty Python records with friends and masturbating are the only two things I can quite honestly remember with any clarity. I promise you that these two activities were always performed separately. I think. Things go well. You write love letters, emails, texts. You make mixtapes, burn CDs, create playlists. Writer's note. These choices kind of depend on the decade in which you met your new love. It's a tricky blend. I mean, you wouldn't text someone telling them you've made them a mixtape on a Memorex C90, but you might write someone a letter and insert a pen drive with an MP3 playlist on it. And then... See where I put things I create at.